just sat with a chair and looked and observed the food forest. And I saw the wasps and the spiders and the different things. And I realized quite clearly that the wasps and the spiders, they're our frontline generals. Like, they're literally there to help protect our food supply. I mean, of course, they're there for their own good, but as a result of them doing what's best for them, they protect our food supply. It's absolutely amazing.
Hey, and good afternoon, everyone. Today I have with me Jim Gayle, foodforestabundance.com. Now, we've been talking about solutions on the channel here for a long time because the problems inbound are gigantic and something that our society has never encountered or seen before. This is even beyond a fourth turning into what I believe is a multi-millennia turning. And we've talked about that before. But what are the solutions here? You're going to need to turn your lawn into a sustainable food forest, or at least start gardens at the periphery of your home, herb gardens, thinking edible landscapes. This is the kind of solutions that we're all going to need to implement incredibly fast this summer at the latest, I really believe, and governments will come on and start to tell you drip feed that you'll need to grow your own food because there's infant formula rationing going on across all the United States at the moment. And you know how they changed the lexicon from a limit of 2 into rationing just in the last week. So there's an uptick in the narrative that's going to go out for a fear-based narrative. Limited 2, I could live with that. Rationing, oh no, you suddenly start to, a huge different reaction happens in the mind, the way you process that information. But also, it's really about helping people grow their own food and then knowing that it's not as difficult as it could be. So, I'm super happy to talk with Jim today, that we can bring some solutions to you and to me too, because I'm in the process of learning. So for myself and everybody out there, this is going to be a great one. So Jim, thanks for joining, and the floor is yours.
All right. Well, thank you, brother. I tell you, there's Victor Hugo a couple hundred years ago said there's one thing stronger than all of the armies of the world, and that is an idea whose time has come. Now, think about the power of that. Are those just fancy words, or is that the truth? Well, based on my knowing, after 15 years being obsessed with the question, what is the idea whose time has come? And by the way, the question itself presupposes that there is an idea already in existence. And that is so true. This idea of food forest everywhere, or in religious terms, the Garden of Eden everywhere, is the idea whose time has come. Another way to say that is lightmente, or enlightenment. I like to look at it in permaculture principles. Like, what is the problem? Because in permaculture, we like to turn the problem into the solution. And when I started to understand the root of the problem, then everything became radically clear to me. And also, as Bill Mollison said, though the problems of our world are increasingly complex, the solutions remain embarrassingly simple. And that's what we'll talk about today.
So this type of information that we're talking about today, at what point might that be censored? Because I saw it was up in Montana, of all places, Montana. They were saying that your seed has to be a registered seed, because they were saying, well, there was like some ghost seeds coming in from China and they're mixing with the registered seed. And even if you plant it in your garden and then, take that to seed for the next year, it's still the invasive Chinese variety. And they're going to come, and they say legally they have the right to come and check your garden. This is where it's going. Montana was so shocking. That's kind of the bastion of what's considered freedoms here, but it's going down to that. I really believe that there will be control of food coming into the harvest season, but then if they're going to control you on the levels of planting your own food too, do you see that in the future at all?
Oh gosh, 50 years ago, Kissinger said, if you want to control nations, control oil. If you want to control people, control food. And if you want to control the world, control the world's currency. Kissinger is just not some random guy. This guy has met with every U.S. president. Why does he get to meet with every U.S. president? Because it's the same families that have been controlling the world ever since.
Yeah, stepping back to what you were talking about with the money, there's actually a real term for that called the velocity of money. And think about that. That's like a current flow in your wires. If you ever been to a coffee shop where they can dim the bulbs and you can start to see the filaments within it, or they can turn it up and brighten it to bright yellow where it looks like a regular bulb, that's just current flow being controlled. Now, whether it be in cash or whether it be electromagnetic frequency coming from our sun, it's the same thing. These ebbs and flows, these faster currents and the slower currents. And think about cycles. El Nino is a cycle that we're all very familiar with. El Nino, La Nina. Cold water, hot water. Well, it's on a cycle, and it's a known cycle, and it doesn't scare people that the ocean temperatures change. Then we have the 11-year solar cycle on average, 11.8 years. But that's a cycle also, solar maximum, solar minimum. But then we come into these longer, heavier, more powerful cycles as we're entering right now. In the beginning of my research, I was so focused on that 400-year grand solar minimum cycle, which is 1640 onset to about 1700. And then looking back in history, you see it every 400 years in great empires and fiefdoms, kingdoms. You could go over to China. But then I'm starting to look now that it's a much more heavier, powerful cycle. So you can see energies would change. And with that changing energy, people would react a little bit differently as well. So I think a lot of people are getting the message that something's just not right now, and everybody's starting to feel it.
Yeah.
And even if you watch the news, you feel it more. But even if you hadn't watched news, even to this minute, just the cycle of energies and the changing frequency around you, from the plants to the Earth's crust, the magnetosphere, everything changing that affects you as a human, a being living on this planet that's connected to that electromagnetic field. We're all feeling the changes. So now it's time to take action. We know the problem's inbound. Okay, we could talk 16, 20 hours on the problem, but we know it's here. Everybody can feel that it's here, and now it's time to actuate. So Jim, I'll let it back to you then there.
All right. So then how do we make the change? Well, it starts with creating a compelling vision of the future, a compelling, inspiring vision that pulls you forward because it makes you feel good, because it's beautiful. So what after my obsession, which started about 15 years ago when I red pilled, and I also had my first 2 daughters, and I also learned permaculture all in the same year. And so I went through that period of kind of struggle, which a lot of people are going through now, because we don't see clearly a path forward. And so if you're a parent, any parents out there, when you have kids, I started looking at the world through a more long-term perspective and asking the question, what's it going to be like in 20, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years? What's the world of my grandkids going to be like? So I went down this rabbit hole, and I started coming out the other side, realizing that when we design systems that produce an abundance of yield, then literally we can have so much abundance, and we will have it. For those who stay in fear and stay controlled by the narrative, they might not make it. Most of them won't make it if they stay in that frequency, that low frequency. And then the question is, what's the most strategic and logical way where I could serve myself while serving others? And that's how our whole corporation and this whole thing started. And even the word corporation, I don't even like that word, because it's still a government-bound system. In fact, we're creating a decentralized barter exchange tool that is connected to food production. So we've got all these pieces of the puzzle, and everything starts with design. Designing your property to be abundant is job one.
Yeah, that's a big task for a lot of people to take in, because with the distractions up to this point, I would say there's less than 15% of at least the US population, so I'll stay in here, that's ready for these changes, or even knows and is really aware that they're coming in. So when the rest of that 85% get the message and they're at 0% readiness, that's going to be a terrifying feeling for them. But then how do we take that large task and then break it into smaller units so you can see progress getting done? You can see that it is possible, some yield, get any yield at all that you can out of any space, just to prove that you can do it. and continuously learn. But that's going to go from a huge overwhelming, oh no, we don't have batteries, we don't have shovels, we don't have soil, we don't have anything, I never planted a seed, what about the water, we don't have hoses. At that point, then what? You're going to have to, I guess, put a spreadsheet together or write a list and then go from there.
We know it's coming, right? We know this is coming because it's very clear to see how they've strategized this takeover. So then the question is, how do we serve the most people while serving ourselves? Well, that's where the opportunity is. This is the biggest catastrophe, but it's also the biggest opportunity in the history of humanity to serve. So when we start growing food and start educating our neighbors, because literally in 3 months, everybody could have food if everybody had seeds and had the understanding of how to do it, right? So then, and even in 2 weeks with microgreens, you can have harvests where you have incredibly nutrient dense food on your kitchen counter, where you have 1 salad a day for your entire family right there on your counter in 2 weeks. So start by buying microgreen seeds. Also start by getting potatoes. You could do potatoes in 5-gallon buckets, where you turn a bucket of soil into a bucket of food. Like, if that's not a miracle, then I don't think there's no, I mean, but it's mind-blowing what's possible when it comes to growing food. So be prepared not only for yourself, but be prepared to serve your neighbors in your community. And then the abundance will flow to you. Like, I've never been so abundant in my life. The abundance is coming exponentially, and then I'm turning that abundance back over, and it's just like this cycle of abundance, because we're helping people see past the fear, see past the confusion and the illusion, and see a way forward that feels good.
Yeah, again, it's about the current flow. The same similar currents are going to stay on that same wire, I would think. Yeah. Now, microgreens and storable foods, what do they have in common? You're going to have to like the taste of what you're growing or what you're storing. It's useless to store a bunch of food and you don't like to eat it. It's the same thing with growing foods. If you don't like onions, then maybe you could trade them for something else, but you're probably going to grow less onions than something else that you might like.
Yeah.
But the microgreens too, there's a vast range of microgreens. And right now, I was at the farm co-op the other day and they had 50-pound bags of sunflower seeds still available. So, sunflowers being super popular. I've had good luck also with black-eyed peas. They come up real soft and supple stems, because a lot of times you grow microgreen, they get too tough and stringy if you can let them get it too tall. So, those are my 2 favorites that I would go to every single time, because I know how to grow them. I know what they taste like. I love the taste, a little bit sweet. But then again, somebody who's never done this and just throws a bunch of microgreens together and go, oh, well, those beets are difficult to grow. Those chia seeds didn't grow very tall. Like, well, those are advanced. Hold on. And the taste is very different too. You get some peppery taste. So, and can I say something about what's in China? So opportunity, hui, and then the danger. Once you put those together, there's opportunity in that. And that's why they squeeze those 2 together. The thing about Mao Zedong also, in the Great Leap Forward, now he was responsible for the deaths of tens of millions. But here's how it went. The Great Leap Forward was the time in history when they decided to expand agricultural production, go into mechanization, and really bring China to the forefront of food production globally. But they saw birds eating the crops out there. And then there was suddenly a bounty on birds and sparrows and anything that was eating crops. Yeah. And I saw the most shocking, even just to today, not shocking in terms of graphic, but rail cars full of birds, because there was a bounty on the birds and you were paid, and then the village would collect those, and there was a rail car full of birds. You think about taking that out of the ecosystem, and then they had the starvation come in directly after that. But how does that parallel to today? Well, we're way short on the fertilizers and herbicides. Not that I like them, but traditional agribiz uses that, and they are so far behind on what they can put out to get decent yields. Yeah. And this is going to swing us into, right around May, when the crop, or at the end of the planting season, and then in July when the crop tours are taking place. I think there'll be a wake-up moment for humanity at that point on how much is not grown.
Yeah. And how much in the United States the government's paying farmers more per acre than they could get by harvesting their crop to destroy the crop. And they just took out 13 million birds. I believe it was somewhere in Europe. 13 million chickens. Right? This is insane, but it's not insane by accident or ignorance. It's insane by design. Anyway, I do see a bright future, and I want to make sure that when people are listening, we see the problem, but don't see it as only a problem. See it as, like you just referred to, as an opportunity.
So where do we begin then? Okay, so watching up to this point, I'm interested. I want to know more. Now what?
Yeah.
Well, I still don't even know where to go to get seeds. Start at that point where they don't even have a shovel.
Yep.
They don't have very much room around their yard either, because whatever, the yard's not that big. Or somebody who's stuck in the city that can only grow in their house. I mean, it's going to take a multitude of solutions to move through this. So one size will definitely not fit all, but if there's multiple sizes, you can plug it in anywhere that you see fit.
Yeah. Well, let's take the 40 million acres of lawn in the United States. When we turn 50% of that 40 million acres into edible, regenerative landscapes that create abundance and life on every level, simply by using our own properties wisely, right? So that's number one. If you live in an apartment, you don't have land, I bet you know somebody who does. And I bet that if you said, I would like to plant gardens or a food forest at your house, I know a company that can design the food forest so it can be the maximum output for the minimum input, which is what food forests are. Then they'll say, yes, let's do it. Right. So you might have a lack of resources, but you do not have a lack of resourcefulness. And resourcefulness is what's going to get you through this next few years.
And before we were talking here on the interview, and I was stating that victory gardens were a nationwide thing. World War II, everybody had victory gardens for those 5 years. And the people at home went without the beef and the butter so much, so they were rationed. It's the same thing that's happening with infant formula now, rationing. But after that war ended, that victory garden concept ended with it, and suddenly the whole message in the late 1940s, going into 1950s was, there's no more rationing. The supermarkets will be full forever. You don't have to, scrimp anymore to help the war effort. So please just get back to the supermarkets and buy things. And oh, by the way, here's a catalog. You can order stuff from home now too. So that era of more self-sufficiency out of necessity to help the war effort just evaporated literally within a couple of years. Hardly anybody was growing gardens. And I saw those images in New York City all the way down. Well, but back then when they had the boulevards, even in the center between the car lane traffic, was all gardens as far as you could see. And an aerial photo on the top of a tall building was just gardens as far as you could see. Any square inch of land was used to grow food. And definitely we went away from that. But we can bring it back, I think.
We can bring it back quickly, and more people are gardening this year than ever in history. So it's already coming back. We're past the pioneer stage. We're past the early adopter stage even, and it's starting to be mainstream to understand the value of growing food instead of lawns. The lawn is the biggest mass brainwashing scam of all time, right? It's the ultimate tool of enslavement. So if that's the problem, then the solution is to design your lawn to be productive. We launched 12 months ago with 3 people. We have more than 100x'd in size. We are now in 20 countries and almost every U.S. state. We have the 42 professional food forest landscape designers, and we have about 135 cooperative partners around the world. The cooperatives are the people who are in the communities helping their neighbors grow food. So if anybody out there wants to be in one of the most important businesses in the world right now, it's also profitable. It's a landscaping business. It's just very functional landscaping. Then the food forest cooperative is absolutely rocking.
Yeah, because you talked about edible landscapes. So walk me through that. So if I'm stepping outside, tell me about an edible landscape. I have my own ideas because, living out here where the Cherokee did prior, they sculpted their forests. They would, if there was something, let's say the blueberry plant was there, they'd clean out around the sides of it and let 2 or 3 blueberry plants grow. And they just kind of walked through and they were able to find what they needed as they we're actually traversing an area. So give me a food forest idea here.
Well, how about I actually walk you through it?
Yes, do that.
Yes, I'll take you for a walk right now. So we just got a bunch more fruit trees today. These are going to be going in the ground here over the next couple of days, a bunch of bananas and all sorts of different stuff. We've got a little propagation station here where we're propagating a lot of the smaller ones. You can kind of see in there. And another propagation station here. Now, I want to mention ponds since we're walking by the pond. We've got a 6-acre pond. Ponds are epically valuable if you use them according to natural cycles and principles. And if you build in the systems, if you design a pond to be the most effective it can be in producing food, it can produce multiple times food per acre or per space as land crops can. The fish and the crayfish and the snails, and of course, all of the edibles that go in ponds are just fantastic. So this is our 6-acre pond. And by the way, we're at Galt's Landing in Central Florida, where we're building a completely off-grid community and demonstration site. The first home we're building, our home is going to be a studio home where we show people how easy it is and how luxurious it is to actually be completely off the grid. So
yeah, no, it's cattail season right now as well. So
yes,
you're looking at these foods that have been used time immemorial. Cattails are coming in right now.
Yeah,
there's all kind of wild forageables if you know what you're looking for. And see, that should also be taught in our schools. Why is not wild foraging during spring so you can get fresh vegetables not taught in our schools? I don't get it. That's not education. That's something else when they don't even teach you about the food that's at your fingertips that grows every single year.
Exactly.
As long as you can find a chemical-free source of it.
Exactly. I'm walking over food. There's food all over the place. In fact, you can see some deer tracks here. See the deer tracks?
Oh yeah.
That's awesome. So yeah, I mean, that could be food. If you create the systems, you don't need fences to have cattle. You just create the food systems into your yard, into your landscape of your community, and you've got so much extra food running around and growing that we literally can be free. In 10 years, the world could be completely transformed into food everywhere.
Wow, with this system being dismantled in a precision way to cause the most effect in the shortest amount of time. Yeah, would we be, once we create this world out of necessity because of economic collapse, supply chain bottlenecks that are going to become permanent lockups, at what point, if we get off and everybody is growing their own food, would the new system that emerges out of this, will they still allow you to grow your own food at the end of it? No, you got to come back on our system. You got to wait for too long. You were out there growing. Now you got to come back in. It's been 10 years. It's been 15 years. You need to come back to the reservation now.
So these are centropic rows. It's called centropic agroforestry. We've got Moringa.
Yeah, Moringa oleifera. That's one of my favorites.
It is. It's the vitamin tree.
Yeah. We're growing that too, but we have it in 5-gallon grow bags and it's not warm enough, but we'll put it out as just an annual, not a perennial like you have down there in Florida. It's too cold up here in the winter. So we get a whole 4.5, 5 months to grow it up here.
Oh, that's awesome. It's so good. And like, we've got this is Okinawa spinach and this is cassava.
Oh, is that Gaynura?
Yeah. It's so good. Everything you see is functional and edible. Even these flowers, these nasturtium flowers, they're so delicious. Look at that beautiful thing.
Oh, nasturtiums, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And everything you see around here, it takes no maintenance. Once you design it and install it properly, then literally you could just have, this is how society should be, where there's just literally food growing all over the place.
Green papaya salad right there.
There you go. Exactly. Isn't that cool? So
yeah, and those milkweeds there too, they have medicinal properties to those. I mean, and the food's one thing, but thinking about medicinals as well, because what we had gone through in the last several thousand years is using our plants as our medicines.
Yes. Yep. Hippocrates said, let thy food be thy medicine, let thy medicine be thy food. Here's another one of my favorites. This is longevity spinach. That's the
Gaynura, a different variety than the purple. There's like 3 varieties of the Gaynura. The purple one, which is more difficult for me to grow. Yeah, there you go. And then, those 2 are different species there. You got that lighter green one. That's the one I've grown before. Also in a 5-gallon grow bag was that lighter green Gaynura.
Yep. And they're so much more nutrient dense than any kind of spinach, of course, we could buy at the store.
Yeah, iceberg is a terrible use of funds to try to put in. It has almost nothing. You'd rather grow romaine than iceberg. Oh, you got the mangoes right there. Oh, those lighter, those darker leaves right now, those very small, different discolored, you can eat those leaves when they come out like that. They're real supple, sort of a tiny wax on. Yeah, the smallest of ones there. Yeah, a lot of people eat those. See what I mean?
Yeah. And the butterflies, oh my God, they're all over the place. The other day I was here, I had some magic mushrooms. And I just meditated and I just sat with a chair and looked and observed the food forest. And I saw the wasps and the spiders and the different things. And I realized quite clearly that the wasps and the spiders, they're our frontline generals. Like they're literally there to help protect our food supply. I mean, of course, they're there for their own good. But as a result of them doing what's best for them, they protect our food supply. It's absolutely amazing.
A lot of parallels that to helping people grow their food too. That Moringa, the miracle tree. Oh, you got that? Was that kohlrabi?
Yeah, exactly. I didn't even know that was there. That one's
popped
ready.
up. Yeah, that's a good one to overwinter. And if they're smaller, you can eat the leaves off that and turn it into a salad as well. But they have to be the smaller leaves before they get too tough.
Yep.
So we eat when it's growing as well. And so kohlrabi is, you're trying to harvest the final, what you saw there, that tubular, but you can eat the leaves off these continuously and have a continuous different, really nutrient rich salad all through the grow season in the year there. There's always small leaves on those things growing.
Yeah. Oh, that's so cool. So, and a lot of people have all these BSs, the belief systems, the bad science, and the bullshit about how hard it is to grow food. That's not true at all. When you design and install properly, then nature does all the work.
Yeah, it's getting that functionality, and then in different latitudes, knowing which plants you can plant there. Because obviously, if you're in, let's say, Michigan, you're not doing Moringa unless it's inside, and you're going to get 2 months to grow it in a bag outside in a grow bag. So it's all about knowing your species. I mean, there's a lot of stuff growing in cooler climates you can't grow down there.